fellow investors, and welcome to another episode of Ritter On Real Estate, where we teach you how to passively invest like a pro. Today, my guest is Julie Holly, and Julie is the founder of 3 Keys Investment. She helps people like you find their freedom through multifamily real estate investing so you can live the life of your dreams. I love that. That's what it's all about. She's invested in single-family homes, house hacked. She's managed properties from 1,000 miles away, passively invested, and currently is passively investing in nearly 300 doors and another 68 in Atlanta, a general partner in 120. So you've got a lot going on there. So thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh, I'm just excited to share space with you. We've already had a great pre-conversation and everything. So I'm like, oh, I guess we should hit record. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you always brighten up the room. So I'm definitely happy that you're here today and I get to share with my listeners. So let's get started. Let's just jump into your background. I always like to start to give people some context about who you are and how you got to be where you are today.
I love that. And by the way, I know I mentioned this, but for everyone listening, if this is your first time listening, definitely listen to all the podcast episodes because I've been binging on it and it's a fantastic, I love listening to people's origin stories. And I didn't realize how neglected that can actually be on shows, particularly maybe my show. I'm like, oh, this is super fun. So I have a braided career history. That's the best way to put it, right? I haven't just had one single career, and I haven't had any career that is, they've both been lasting over the last 20 years, but they've been going like being braided together in and out. And that's between real estate and education. And so I grew up in a single family home. We did not invest. It was single family sales. Grandpa, dad, and then guess what? It's just kind of in the blood. At one point I did that, but before going into single family real estate, I decided that I was going to become a public school teacher because you know what? Real estate sales, and we can see it's getting ready to do its thing again. We all can see the writing on the wall. It's a feast or famine type situation. And that's what I grew up with, a roller coaster. And I didn't want the roller coaster. I wanted stability. I wanted predictability. And you know what? Teachers, they have like a very nice pension that happens. And so you didn't have to really worry about retirement planning. And it just felt so safe and cozy. And most importantly, as contributing to the world. I mean, we can all agree that teachers are definitely investing in the future of our country and the world. And so I'm like, gosh, this is like everything that I need to be doing, all wrapped in one. This is going to be perfect. So I go into public ed. And by the way, FYI, this is like, I'm 22 years old when I first started teaching. And I just think now, like, good golly, they let me, it's just wild. I was still a child. So I'm in public ed, and year 3, they start handing out pink slips. And I am just like barely a couple rungs up from getting a pink slip, or just even that possibility of being laid off. And that's when everything went haywire for me. And I'm like, wait a second, there isn't the security that I was looking for. I can get laid off. Government jobs are not as stable and solid as I believed they were. So I'm going to take a chance on myself. Like, why not just, I've always been interested in going into real estate sales like Gramps and Dad. Why don't I just do that? Because then I have control. So I'm a control freak a little bit. So we go into real estate sales and kicked butt. It was great. But I also noticed that I was changing. And I didn't like some of the changes with who I was and making a lot of money. And this is right before 08 crash. This is like 05, 06, right? And things are great. And if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. And there's just so much shady stuff going on. And I am very opposed to doing anything that is not like letter of the law, like let's just follow the rules, do it the right way. And it just it left a bad taste in my mouth. I thought, you know what? It's great. This money's super fun. So I know I can be successful at this. I know I can make a lot of money, but I don't like the people I'm working around and
Mhm.
the things taking place. So I called the school back up and the school district, talked to HR. I'm like, hey, any positions coming up? And they found me a position. So compliment to me, in my opinion, like that they were like, we will find you a spot. And they found
Yeah.
me a spot. I went back in. And during this time, I bought my first home, and toilet sinking in the subfloor, rat feces around the perimeter, cobwebs. Like it was like Indiana Jones. Like I went in with a shop vac. It's like just, I mean, it was so, you had to wear a mask. It was just like a total train wreck, 1938 vintage house train wreck. Okay. They
Mhm.
lived there forever, but that was my first opportunity at investing. So it was my home. I was able to improve it. And then I was able to rent out a room in the house and have, my mortgage offset. It was just this amazing eye-opening experience. And I thought, I'm just going to, any house that I live in, I'm just going to keep, and I'm going to build a little portfolio. And
Mhm.
then when I retire someday from whatever I end up doing, I will have this little single family portfolio. But you know what
Yeah.
happens? That you have kids. You have kids.
Several. Yeah. I know how that changes things.
Oh my gosh, it really does change things. And so right before my son's born, we had moved to Denver. We're long distance landlords. And this is right before literally we closed before the '08 crash, like days, moments before. And we sold our very first house, like the first house I bought, we sold it. We're like, we're not doing this long distance landlord thing. We're going to be totally debt free. We're going to have the savings and be cushy. So we kept doing this little back and forth between being long distance landlords. And I just felt this very ill at ease sensation after we welcomed our second child and moved away again. And I'm managing this property from across California to Denver, Colorado. It was
Mhm.
fine. I was a great manager. We had other, a single family. And it's like, everything was fine. We never had toilet issues. We never had the termites. We never had any of those big issues that we hear about. So I didn't have this bad, horrific, oh, I have terrible tenants. Like I had really high quality residents. They were really good people, actually people who one I've mentored in rentals. But at the same time, it was
Right.
one door. And now I have a couple of kids, and one door left this
Mm.
vulnerability. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I
I
know
know
we
how
have
those
the
expenses go
reserves,
up too.
right? So you're like, oh my gosh, I know we have the reserves. If we have a resident move out, that's fine. We've got the reserves. If we have a big expense, I know we have it there. But for me, and I don't know if this is just a female thing, a mama bear thing. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's how just a personality thing, but I just was like, I feel exposed. I feel vulnerable. I don't like the fact that really anything could happen and all of the income from the year is immediately annihilated.
Yeah, I mean that's not a female thing or a mama bear thing. That's just
Okay.
like a smart business risk mitigation thing, right? Like you need to have uh cushion and contingency plans, and that's the problem, right? Like you said, one thing could happen, it could wipe all your profit out for a year.
And it's kind of like you start looking at it and you're like, and how much profit am I actually making? I mean, rents
Yeah.
were going up considerably, and we could push it, and it's fine. And we were making, 350 a month easily, just off of one of our rentals. But it's like that peace of mind, and this is what I always come down to. And I know we're going to touch on choosing sponsors, at some point, and like,
Yeah.
to me, my peace of mind and my sleep at night is worth more than X, Y, or Z. So I value that
Yes.
more than anything, because if you don't have a peace of mind and if you can't sleep at night, really, what is life at that point?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons that we uh really we know every loan that we've done, at least through my company now, when it's not just myself doing it, is like we always choose the non-recourse options, right? It's the same reason. We could get a little bit of a lower rate taking on full recourse, but the ability to sleep at night significantly reduces when you're facing a full recourse option versus non-recourse. So it's just, I totally get it. Like there's trade-offs between, it's not all about how to absolutely make the maximum dollars and cents possible. It's that trade-off of lifestyle and livelihood and peace of mind that's critical. And so I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, yes. So we're on the same page, and so it's great. It was a great starting spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understood, I can manage, I can invest from far away. And that makes a lot of sense because I live on the Canadian border in the middle of nowhere. You were recently in Montana. I'm like, where? I mean, like, that's not, I mean, Montana.
Not a lot of cell phone service out there.
There's not a lot of cell phone service where I live either.
Right.
So it's like, literally look out my window. I've got my mountains. I'm a happy Beautiful. Camper in my house. And so, so it's like, you start evaluating things, and that peace of mind is important. I can have these single family. I can manage them from far away. I know I can do all of this. However, that's not the play I want to have in my life. So we sold, and the money was sitting on the sidelines. It was driving me crazy. Meanwhile, I'm like going in and out. We had our kids. I was homeschooling our kids. And then we started a co-op, homeschool co-op. And I'm managing, this is like kind of along that timeline, right? I'm managing the homes and stuff. And so it's always staying active in it in some capacity. But then, I went back to public school ed. And that's when I really got the itch. It was like, just told my husband, the money is sitting on the sidelines, and people, listen, money sitting on the sidelines right now is money that is like you're flushing down the toilet. It's like, you don't want money sitting, especially now, at least at that point, we weren't facing the inflation that we're facing now, but at this point, any money that is sitting in a bank account is literally just costing people money every day versus, hey, I can invest it into this apartment complex. And now, I don't know if this is how I view it. And I know this is kind of like derailing a little bit, but I view the multifamily assets now as banks. Yeah. And so I've told investors, my investors, and as I meet new people, I'm like, just think, you're putting your money, it's not into a traditional bank, you're putting your money into this property, and that's your bank. Your money goes in, and as we give distributions, it's coming out at whatever inflation is, whatever the dollar is worth. It's like current. So you're never having this until we sell the property at the end. But along the way, you're just getting this like current market value dollar coming your way, and the rest of it's just growing and expanding with inflation. What do you think? Is that
I mean, I like that.
Is that a teacher way of doing it?
I think it's accessible. I think it's something that people can relate to and understand, because I think that's one of the issues that we face in what we do is it's just, there's a lot of unfamiliarity around it. And with unfamiliarity comes this idea of risk, right? This, what I call perceived risk, just because it's unfamiliar, when in actuality, when you look at it, right, the risk profile, there's all different ways to do investing, right? But like from what I do and from what you invest in, it's the value add piece, you're relatively very low risk. And when you look at a risk adjusted return standpoint, right? So I like that concept helps people kind of wrap their head around it, because the one thing I wanted to like just pause on was like just the public service announcement that like, please, yes, don't let your money sit in a bank account right now. I'm trying to tell everybody this. Investors I talk to, your friends, family, like, look, invest with me or don't, but please just don't let it sit in a bank account. Because like you said, if inflation's running at 8-9%, I mean, you're literally losing that every year. So it's not just it's just not an option right now. It's not an option. You have to get active with it in some way. And so, yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a good way to explain it and make it approachable. I think about them like businesses, which is similar. And I think it's also a way to help it be a little more, I guess, approachable for people, because I look at it as, I'm buying a business that's been there for 30 or 40 years. It's existed
Yes.
for 30, 40 years. It's cash flowed for 30 or 40 years. It's not going to go away overnight, right? Unless there's a fire or something, and we have insurance for that.
I was
But
just going to say, and even that doesn't usually turn out to be a bad situation, provided no one's hurt or injured. It actually turns out to be great.
Yeah, and you're appropriately insured, and
Yes.
and that's like a whole different episode and a whole different topic. But
Right.
but this idea of, I think, relating it to something that is more familiar, I think, is helpful to help people kind of get over that hump of, oh, this just seems different and strange, because as we know, it's had a major impact in both of our lives. And that's a big part of this show too, is just helping people understand that you can't sit on the sidelines. You have to take control of your finances, and multifamily investing is a great way to do that. It's a great supplement to anybody's portfolio, right?
I can't imagine our portfolio without it. And like you said, it's a business. And that right there, Kent, is exactly what drew me into it. I told my husband, listen, I can't stand this money on the sidelines. And he's like, okay. I mean, we have a healthy relationship of mutual respect. And so he's like, why don't you just do some research, figure something out, and let's talk about it. And that's when I found syndication as a vehicle. And I was just over the moon. Like the moment I learned about it, it was like literally my world was like this really happy, magical place. So I'm like, this is what I was looking for. I believe in, I know I already live in a happy, magical
your
world.
Happy, magical place. I love it.
Because I love real estate. Real estate is just a beautiful asset class. It does so much. I mean, it serves communities, it serves residents, it serves investors. So it's really, to me, it's just this magical investment already.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it when I was learning about it, I'm like, this was the missing piece for my portfolio. I didn't want to go into small multifamily. You still have that exposure in a duplex. I mean, sure, it's 50-50 now, but I'm like, okay, what's something that is really fiercely more adaptable while still providing good? Because like for me, contribution is huge. And people contribute in different ways. My personal thing is I want to help with, the resident experience, right?
Yeah.
And so now if I have this huge 100+ unit complex, now I have, like you said, I have a business. I have all of my risk is being mitigated. All of my downside is mitigated in the business plan, because a properly structured business plan is going to calculate all of those things. And right now, golly, if you look at some underwriting and it's like, okay, those are interesting assumptions. I'm not going to bank on those same things. Maybe you should adjust your cap rate a little more for your exit. I don't know. Actually, I do know, and I won't be taking that investment on. Thank you.
Yeah, it's you brought up a good point though about the assumptions are so critical, right? And as you're thinking about we're thinking about the environment we're in, which there's a lot of turmoil going on right now. There's just a lot of uncertainty, right? There's interest, like in a couple ways, right? Interest rates are up, even though I watch the forward curves of interest rates every day, and we're actually down quite a bit on where we think the peak is going to be based on what people are expecting. So that's positive. Interest rates are still up, right? Relatively speaking, over the past 10 years. I mean, you look back in history, and this is where I get into the real econ stuff, because I'm an econ nerd, but like we're still in a pretty good spot if you look back at where we were in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
But then you look at rent growth, right? Which is actually crazier than anything interest rates have done, in that a property or a city that we invest in, Cincinnati, which has been like the sleepiest town through history from a rent growth perspective, average 3% rent growth, has grown 28% year to date and is one of the leading cities in the country, which blows my mind. But you look at these things going on and it creates a lot of uncertainty, right? And I think people are trying to deal with, well, how do I what do I make of all this, and what should I be assuming, right? And how should I be looking at these things? I think especially investors that are maybe just getting into this for the first time and haven't looked at hundreds or thousands of deals like you, right? And have context from other deals to kind of play against. So maybe that's something you can help educate some folks on. Like when you're looking at the deal, and you're looking at assumptions specifically, like rent growth, expense growth, cap rates, what are things that you're looking for? And maybe there's ranges you like to be within. Maybe there's things that are like, oh, that's a red flag. You can share a little bit with to give people some insight.
A couple of the key areas that I am looking for right now are rent growth. And while rent growth is, I believe that rents are going to continue to grow, and that is my assumption. I also am highly acutely aware that rents can also contract. And so as much as I want to lean into my assumption that they're going to grow, I also have this other part of me is hyper aware, like a higher level of consciousness of, since that is my assumption, I need to be challenging that assumption on every single deal. What are the indicators that would lead us to believe that we can push the growth X amount of percentage? And it's deal by deal, right? Market by market, deal by deal, because was it being mismanaged, or are we going to be doing a bunch of cap X? Is it, and so really looking into what is reasonable for this asset, not what would I like it to be in the magical world. No, because I always have to tell people I am an eternal optimist, but I have this realist that comes out that's because I'm aware of that, I have to be acutely okay, be aware. Where are rents for this business plan? What would actually be realistic? And so I think if you are listening and you're looking to passively invest, you need to be asking the sponsor those hard questions, digging into, well, why do you think the rents can go this high? And how are you going to ensure that? And what would happen if they didn't go that high? How is this business plan going to work out? So it's is this business plan for rents for anything? If any of these things do not work out, how is this business plan actually going to look? Because it's still, I think that we're probably aligned on that level of, I've put in the worst case scenario, and this is still going to be a good return for my investors. And so I feel very confident moving forward with this versus, and I've definitely walked away from situations where it's you know what, if that financing that doesn't have a cap on it, and if our business plan, if we can't sell in 5 years and we don't have a cap on our interest rate and we don't have runway, and we're going to have to wait, hold on. So making sure that's different topic. I just transitioned all of a sudden, but making sure there's a runway on that loan is huge to me. I don't the financing could look a lot of different ways, but is there enough runway for contingencies? Can you mitigate the risk? Okay, great. You might have a floating rate and you've bought a rate cap, which Marcus and Millichap just released some really interesting information on that people should reference.
Oh, really?
It's on my LinkedIn page. Yeah, I actually posted the article because I just thought it was good food for thought, because they were looking at floating rates and cap rates, and they were just providing a different context and expanding upon those concepts and what they really cost you ultimately in the loan and what the exposure looks like. So definitely, it was interesting. And that's not my natural bend to read articles like that, but I push myself.
My favorite stuff right there.
I know, it's econ, right? I do find it pleasurable because I want to be knowledgeable, because in order to guide investors accurately and successfully, you need to be entrenched in those things. So let me pause for breath and let you talk.
No, there's a lot of good stuff there. I think to summarize a little bit, right, and maybe just blend in some of my own perspective as well. So when we're thinking about assumptions, I think it's also important to look at history, right? And so when we look at things, because your what you said, what I heard at least, was that you have to kind of weigh how likely is this to actually occur, right? And that depends on different factors. It depends on what's happening in the deal, right? But there also is just this fact that there is a broader market out there, right? And that broader market and the broader macro things that are going on are also going to play into this. And so when we look at it, things like rent growth, for example, or expense growth, I mean, we're definitely, paying attention to what's happening right now, but we're spending a lot of time looking at like what's happened historically, right? And because over time there's always a reversion back to the mean, right? There's this reversion back to an average. And so it's running at 20% this year, but if the average is 4%, I mean, over time there's going to be this reversion back. And so not that it's going to happen in 5 years, who knows, but I think when we look at it, at least without getting into too much detail, the idea is to just understand history and understand what's happened in that market historically, and then take into account things have changed. Maybe more people are flooding into that market than ever have before, and that's going to change things, right? But just, I think, even as a passive investor, understanding those points of context, and I'm not even saying you have to go and like do all the research yourself, but ask those questions to the sponsor, ask the assumptions behind the assumptions, right? Like, okay, well, you're saying it's going to grow 10%. Why? What are the factors that you are showing? And I think that's what you're saying, are showing that are going to support that, right? So it's like when you write a paper in school, you got to cite your sources, right? You can't just say all this stuff. So it's kind of a similar thing. And I think that's what's important, maybe, is the takeaway, is like, make sure you're asking those questions and make sure they're citing their sources and that they have backup, right, at the end of the day. And
definitely.
I know you and I were talking about something kind of prior to the show, just around, and I think it's around this same topic, where you had an incident recently where you actually saw some things that were going on, didn't like what was going on, and actually decided to pull out of the investment, And so I know that can be kind of a sensitive topic, but I think it's something that I bet there's people on this that are listening that have been in a similar situation, and maybe they didn't feel, maybe they felt bad about it. Maybe they felt confident. They didn't feel confident about it. Maybe they didn't back out when they felt like they should have. So maybe you can empower them a little bit to know what to look for and know that that's okay.
Yes. So it's not kosher. It is not kosher to commit to something and then to withdraw from something. In my estimation, when I commit to something, it's like, I am committed to this. And yet we spoke earlier about that sleep at night policy I have, right? And without getting into the deal itself, I like the people involved. I like the asset, but there was something that, like, this is going to sound woo to people. It's going to sound however it's going to sound, but I wasn't sleeping. Like, I got into the deal. I'm talking to my investors. It's like, just something wasn't matching up. There was this misalignment, and I wasn't disregarding that. So I've been spending time over the last year and a half trying to learn how to listen to my intuition better, because we're told so often that we need to have the data to back up anything that we're doing, have the science, have the data. And really, we're not, especially in Western culture, conditioned to trust ourselves and our intuition. And so I was just started like really leaning into that, like asking myself those tough questions, like, why am I feeling this way? I was excited about this. I'm excited about partnering with these people. I'm excited about the location. I'm excited. Like, so with all of these great things, and then challenging, okay, is this just nerves? Is this just this? There are lots of elements that go in when you're bringing in, if you genuinely care about your investors, and my investors are, I'm just going to be a stone wall to protect the investors, right, in my community. And so when you think about that, there are a lot of, there's a whole nother layer that goes into your investing, right? When you're bringing investor in their capital into it, because I know my investors, I know what they're trying to accomplish, and I want to support that, and I never want to lose their money. So I'm like, okay, is this just what is going on? Ultimately, Kent, it was a level of intuition, and I trusted it. And since have had somebody come to me who was going to participate in the deal and brought some information that I didn't have. So if I had not listened to my intuition and withdrew from that and just said, I don't know why, I don't normally do this. This isn't a normal business practice of mine, but I am going to take a risk on this because that mitigates the risk for my investors. And so I would rather lose my face than lose my investor's dollar, right?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. Yeah. I think that, and your intuition is developed over, again, seeing hundreds, thousands of deals, right? And seeing these different things. And there's so much in your subconscious that you pick up that you don't even know that you're seeing, and something. And whether it was details or whether it was body language or whether it was something didn't sit right. And I really do wholeheartedly believe that is something that we need to pay attention to, not just in investing, but in life, right? We get these gut feelings, and like those really do mean something. So no, I think it was, I think it's admirable of you to take the hit and protect your investors. And I think I think that's a benefit for folks that are newer, in aligning themselves with someone like you, because you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, and you just have that context to know, right? What's working, what doesn't, and those long-term relationships, right? So I think that there's definitely value there, and I think that's but no, I think that's good. So you saw something you didn't like, you were able to kind of, you're able to step out of it, and that kind of leads to where I wanted to go next, really. So we'll just go there. Is, in your role with what you do, I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, really first you're picking the sponsor, right? You're choosing the people that you want to deal with. You're choosing, people use terms like you're choosing the jockey, right?
Right.
And so, and you're really trusting then that they're going to make those right decisions, that, the right markets, the right submarkets, the right deals, and that they're going to run it effectively. And I'm sure you do a lot to vet that out. And that's kind of what I want to get into, is because it's something I spend a lot of time, at least, messaging on this show, of the sponsor is more important than the deal, right? A good sponsor can save a bad deal, and a bad sponsor can kill a great deal. And there's really nothing more important than that. And so what are some, I guess, how do you pick the people that you want to work with?
I'm going to get into that, and I'm going to say bet on the jockey, not the horse, for sure. And making uncomfortable conversations to investors that have already, gone in and registered for a deal, and having to have that call like, hey, I'm just letting you know that our company is backing out. You're still welcome to be in it. But every one of those calls, the investor response was, no problem. We're following. We'll just wait. We'll wait till you bring us the next one. Like, it's totally fine. Like, we trust your, and to tell them, like, this is intuition. I don't have anything at this moment. I would rather protect you, and I've never felt like this. So I'm just going to roll with that and protect you, so it was nice to have that investor response, but that is one of the critical things. How do you know that your sponsor is going to actually go to bat for you? How do you know that everybody on the GP is acting in your best interest and not trying to pad their own pockets, right? And that's character. And so for me, when I am looking at sponsorship teams to work with, there are people that at this point, everyone I've partnered with are people I've known for a minimum of 1 year. And in general, that is kind of one of my vetting processes, is like, how long have I known you? How long have I been tracking with you? What am I seeing from you? What am I seeing in your deals? So it's not just this like, oh my gosh, we met at this conference and it was so much fun, and like, let's go partner up. I really want to know who people are, because people's character and those little knee-jerk reactions that come out on social media, on their personal page or wherever, like it doesn't mean they're a bad person or a good person. It's not a value statement. It just says, is this a person that I want to align with? Is this a person where I want to bring my investors to the table with? So I think really understanding and being confident in somebody's character is my absolute number one thing. My second, which this is very different from most people, Kent. So I'm the one off, probably because I do high performance coach and I do a lot of mindset work. Sure. And so I do come at it from a different approach. But if somebody has solid character, they will do what's right no matter what. Like okay, people do make mistakes. So, but when they make a mistake, that's really when it counts. Like, how are you going to respond to, whatever happened? And are you going to own it if it was a mistake on your part? And let's see how that goes. The other thing I am always aware of is, how can I show up in this partnership? And investors, limited partners, need to feel that same way towards the team as well. Am I comfortable picking up the phone and making that phone call to ask questions that might be perceived as, quote, dumb? Are they going to be condescending to me? Will they have time for me? Am I going to feel like they're putting me off? And so if there has to be a relationship for everybody involved. So from a limited partner to, their connection to the sponsorship team, they need to be able to feel that level of connection. And this is like 3 Keys investments level. Okay. Like a little concierge service. And then everyone on the general partnership. For me, if I don't feel that way with the entire team, then we have a problem, because there can't be any communication gaps within a team. Everyone needs to feel that, okay, we're equally comfortable, we're competent, we respect each other, and we're going to link arms if something starts to go south or we need to just gird things up. We know that we don't have a weak link here at all. So I think that those are maybe some things that are the one-offs that people haven't heard so much. There are other ways you can do the profile check and get the PI to do the background check. I think that's a great idea too. But there are lots of other things to do, but those are my 2 critical ones.
So character and communication is kind of what I took away from that is, and that makes, it makes sense. I think it's hard character is the hardest thing to nail down, right? As we talk about, we talk about integrity, but it's the same thing. It's doing what's right when nobody's looking, right? And that is probably the hardest thing to nail down. I think the only way that you do that is by engaging with them over time. And I think that's difficult for individual investors who are kind of in and out, and want one deal, but aren't constantly in this space. It can be tough to take the time to be able to build that relationship. And so I think that, that's kind of your value, right? You're building these long-term relationships. You're doing that pre-vetting. You're validating that character, and people know, because they can align with you, then if you align with that person, that there's kind of that transfer there. So I think that makes sense. And then communication is so critical. I've been, when I started as a passive investor, and that was one of my big things I hated, is you would invest $50,000, $100,000 with someone, and then you just wouldn't hear from them for 6 months. And you're like,
just can't even imagine
what's going on. What's going on?
Right.
Yeah. And so that was a big takeaway for me. It was monthly communication, nothing big. Nobody wants to read a novel, but just so you know that I'm thinking about you and we're working on it and stuff is happening, I think is important. And then I guess the other thing that you said was just, and I guess this goes back to character, but just the willingness to communicate what I think of as the news, good, bad, or indifferent. It's got to be delivered, and not hiding the bad stuff, not overly focusing on the good things, but just being very matter of fact about it. And like I said, delivering the news. And so, those are good points. I think those are things that people can take away and focus on. And again, ask questions about, right, as people think about how do they make their own investments. So, Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't it? I'll add to that, really, to your point also, is that it is challenging for, our professionals that are, limited partners, and they love their job. So many people actually truly love what they do. And so, that's why they're a limited partner. They want to make a wise investment, but they want to continue in their career path because they love it. And so, having those relationships, like, how do you develop those relationships without like sucking all the life from your time? Well, you listen to podcasts like this, and you see, oh, Kent shows up, and he shows up consistently, and he's consistent with people. And this is how, I think that when you have someone that's creating content, and just creating a lot of content, especially over time, that's a great way to vet somebody. It's like, oh, wait, this person's been doing this for a long time. Like, trust me, there will be a time when they mess up. Like if somebody's trying to put on a show and it's just a show, the facade is going to go away in time. But also, I would imagine you've done this also, but if I've had investors that need to place capital, and I know that it needs to be placed right away, and I don't have something that is going to be in their time frame, then I can say, hey, you know what? Kent has a deal, and he's somebody that I would trust my money with, and I know he has an opportunity for you, right? So if you have somebody that is really looking out for your best interests, then they can also connect you with other people that are probably birds of a feather. And so once you're aligned with somebody that you truly know, like, trust, if you come into that situation where you need something, they were probably going to be the people that are going to help you get there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that just shows, it shows a selflessness too, right? You're doing what's best for the investor, not what's best for you, because the best thing for you is keep their money on the sidelines until you have the next deal, right? But this is a long-term game, and that's not how you build long-term relationships, right? I think that selflessness is key. So I commend you for that. I wanted to switch gears a little bit to the coaching side, because I think that a lot of what you coach on, a lot of the mindset work, I think it's so important with investing. I think that we talked about a while back, like this idea of this perceived risk, or this difficulty of kind of going into the unknown. And I know I experienced it personally when I started investing in real estate. It's just very unfamiliar, right? And when something's unfamiliar, it can be difficult to take that step. And that's all mindset, right? It's limiting beliefs. When I talk to investors, I find a lot of it almost turns into like, I don't want to say necessarily therapy, but it definitely is kind of a helping them have certainty, so that they can make the right decision that I know ultimately is going to be best for them, because I've experienced the same thing, in my own life and in my own finances. And so it's kind of, right, helping people pass their own limiting beliefs and the own things. There are things that are in their head, right, that have been built up over the years and their belief system. So I say all that because, how do you help folks make that first step to be able to go from something that seems maybe very scary or at least unfamiliar, but to be able to take that step to actually start receiving those benefits, then versus just doing the same old, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always just think also, fear is in our mind. Danger is something that's real right now. And our mind will tell us to be afraid, and we have to differentiate between is this a danger and an immediate threat, or is this just fear that's clouding my vision and everything? But when oftentimes for passive investors, making that first step, and really most human beings, I found, people, clients that I've coached, it all starts with vision. What do you see? What do you see in your life? So really someone needs to understand, well, why do I want to have this investment portfolio that includes multifamily or stocks or crypto or whatever? What is my ultimate goal? And really cultivating a clearer vision for what they want in life. I I always call it ideal self. Some people call it future self. It doesn't have to be a certain age. It's just what is that you want to grow and evolve into? And once there's a concept there, then we can go into clarity. And clarity is where confidence comes from. Clarity is where action comes from. But you can't have clarity until you understand. So it's like trying to bake a cake and say, like, I don't know what kind of cake, but I'm just going to throw these ingredients together and get what I get. Like,
yeah,
that's not going to work. And so really being clear, oh, you know what? I'm going to bake a rainbow cake for my daughter's birthday, and it's going to have these colors, and it's going to have these sprinkles, and this, you can tell I've done this, right?
yeah.
It's like, it's very clear, and the vision is clear. You can see the towering cake, and go to my Facebook profile. There's probably a picture there. So it's like, once you can see it, once you can see what you want in life, unfortunately, most people don't take time to develop that vision. We're so busy going through the day-to-day, managing our careers, enjoying our family and trying to nurture and cultivate relationships, right? That we don't actually take time to just kind of pull back and get quiet and still. And what is this all about? I mean, it's like being at the Denver airport on the little people mover thing and going fast. And it's like, you get to the end of it and you're like, what gate am I at now? What is this? You just don't even step on it. Stop, develop that vision, see what you want in your life. And then you can develop the clarity that will develop that confidence to take the first step. That is like super nutshell. There's so much more that goes into that, but that's where I believe like the foundation starting block is right there.
Yeah. And I think that the idea of like, I love the idea of your, like, identifying your purpose or I guess for me, it was called purpose. I mean, for others, maybe it's goal. Right. And then saying, when that purpose or goal is greater than your fear, I think is when you'll take the action. Right. So if you're clear, like you said, getting really clear on, okay, because you think, oh, I've heard people are investing in real estate, I should invest in real estate. Right. But why, and what's that going to do for you? Right. And I think that's probably where you help people get really clear on that. And you get to that why, and you get maybe 3 or 4 steps down into that why. Well, I want to make more money. Well, why? Well, because I want to be able to retire early. Well, why? Well, because I want to spend more time with my family. Right. Okay. Like now it's something that we can work with. Right. When you say, okay, and maybe there's even deeper levels than that, but at least there you're saying, okay, because I want to spend more time with my family, because I want to be present for my kids, I'm willing to take the extra effort. It's not always easy to invest in these deals because they say it's passive, but you got to do some work, right? You got to read some paperwork. You got to understand things. I think that's where that little bit of extra understanding and that deeper mission can help you get through those things, right? And get over that. And I think that, like, I relate it to me when I started my podcast. It was a very uncomfortable experience for me because I'm not really a in your face, wanting to be in the spotlight type of person. I'm introverted. And it wasn't until my mission became greater than my fears, my mission to spread the word about real estate and investing, because I saw the power it was having in my own life. That was greater to have an impact on people than my insecurities of, oh, I'm going to sound terrible and no one's going to listen to me and all this, right? The junk I'd built up in my head. Only once my mission was greater than my fear could I actually act on it, and could I actually get out there and start doing it. And now we're 100 something episodes in, and now it seems pretty easy. But you have to get started, and you got to get it's that first step is like, how do you help people get there? I think is so important. So I like that. I like this idea of define your vision, your goal, whatever you want to call it, and be really clear, like 3-5 levels deeper, like why you want that.
And it's also who, so really what you discovered, and this is really one of the ultimate discoveries, is like, who am I in this world? So I
Mhm.
have a very deep belief that we are created hardwired. I talk about it all the time. Like we're all uniquely created with something to contribute to this world.
Yeah.
And it often gets masked. And even the why of I want to have these things so that I can spend time with my family, that's still masking the ultimate contribution that you have. That's a moral obligation, a moral responsibility, like that's a natural thing. So there's actually something even more in every single person beyond their family. And
Mhm.
so like really peeling back and saying, what do I really want to contribute to the world? And what do I believe that is? And how do I unpack that?
I like that. I like that. That's going much deeper. And yeah, your moral obligation. I like that, to be able to provide more, right? And that's what when they look at it, it's like, what are you achieving by having, let's say, financial freedom, right?
And
You're
time
ultimately,
freedom.
yeah. I mean, well, that's what financial freedom actually
Mhm.
gets you, right? It's
Yeah.
really time freedom. It's really the freedom to be able to do whatever you want. And a lot of people, I think, when they can do whatever they want because they're financially free and they're not tied to a desk all day, is to, go after their highest best use, right? Which I think ultimately will contribute more to society. So like that's kind of the idealistic goal of all this, right? Like when you get down a few layers.
Yeah, it's huge. Vivid Vision by Cameron. Is that his last name or first name? But that's a fantastic book. If you're listening
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, well, I want to learn more about that. My book club is currently reading the book. And
Nice.
so I'm not all the way in through it and everything, but definitely it's content where it would make developing and cultivating your vision more
Hmm.
accessible for sure.
Oh, very cool. Well, we'll make sure that we get that listed in the notes for
Yeah.
people.
Easy read also. Fast and easy.
Also helpful. Also
Yes.
helpful. Well, so Julie, I've just enjoyed talking with you so much. Before I let you go, I want to take you through our keys to success round. There's 4 questions I want to ask you. The first one, which is just so up your alley, is if you were going to invest your money, or I guess in this case, your investor's money, with someone in a deal, and you could only ask them one question, what would that one question be?
Hmm. Let me have the number of your best friend, please. I'm not kidding you. Let me have a number of, and I would probably ask for a few numbers and get on the call and get on the phone and talk to some people in their life.
Yeah. And tell me what you're looking for.
That's so funny, right? Well, you go back down to the character,
Yeah.
right? And it's in casual conversation where you discover the most. So, you shoot the breeze with somebody's buddy and you can, in a friendly way, you can learn a lot about who they are and how they respond to life. And it's
Hmm.
friendly, it's well intentioned, but what is their character over time? Because it will reveal itself. Or you talk to their investors, they will tell them, oh yeah, they communicate, they have monthly emails. Or for
Yeah.
instance, I have one investor that is a first time investor, and if the newsletter is going for an update's going to be a little bit late, I know I'm going to like send a text to him, just, hey, I just want you to know, I want to make sure I send out all the information. I'm waiting on this last piece, right? So you want to like be able to hear from the investor experience. And you want to, if you could talk to a friend, that's something I think it's
That's good.
interesting.
I think that's a first. I've not heard that one, but I
I
mean, it makes a
know,
lot of sense.
because if you know who somebody is, you will know what they are going to do.
Hmm.
But if you don't know who they are, then
Hmm.
what they will do is unpredictable.
Hmm. I like that. That's really insightful. What are you most proud of in your career?
Oh. You know what? I'm going to say that's like, whew, I have to like make sure I'm not being egotistical, right? Everybody probably is like, oh, I would say really just I've got grit and I've said no a lot. And I'm really proud of myself for that. For an eternal optimist who can see the bright side in everything, like to say no and to not take opportunity that would advance my career and advance my place within the industry and such in a rapid way.
Hmm.
because of my deeper convictions, and just holding on to those convictions has been honestly a huge personal growth experience. I went an entire year without doing a deal, and it was extremely painful and humiliating, and like, what's wrong? I had to go through my own internal dialogue and deal with those. And it really made me so much stronger to look back at the end of that year and just to be disappointed that I hadn't done a deal, but then to look back and say, but you called all the right shots. And you can see where some of those things have led, and you called the shots the right way. So it's fine. All things will come in the right time. So wow. I think that grit to stick to the convictions and the principles has made me proud of myself.
That's good. Congratulations. I think that's extremely difficult, to have the shiny objects in front of you and be able to say no and stay aligned to your deeper conviction. I think that goes back to understanding what is your vision, right? Or what is your purpose? If you don't know, you'll go a million different directions, and those directions may not all be aligned with who you truly are. So I think, again, go back to the vision, and then that's allowed you have a strong vision. It's allowed you to stay to your convictions. So absolutely something to be proud of. So you mentioned a book just now. It can be the same book. Maybe you got a different book though. I know you have a book club, so you probably have an abundance.
I'm like,
so what's one book that everybody should read?
Okay, I can't give one. I'm going to give two.
Okay.
And that's just how it's going to go down. They're related books, we'll say. High Performance Habits by Burchard. Especially for those of you that are listening, more than likely you are a high performer. When I read that book the first time, it was balm to my soul. I had no idea. The way I engaged the world always felt a little different. And that book just led me to understand myself better. And most people in the multifamily investing space are very much high performers. And so I think that it's it'll lead you to introspection. It'll lead you to really good ways of working with yourself and leveraging how you are wired so that you can live a more balanced life, like a whole life. It's all about, did I love well? Did I lead well? Am I leading a meaningful life and having deeper relationships? So I think it's a fantastic read. Burchard, High Performance Habits. I'm also going to say Super Coach by Michael Neal. So it's a different book. It challenged me in different ways. I don't agree with all of it. And that's why I love it. Like, always challenge yourself. Don't just read things that are an echo chamber. Read things that come from a different perspective. That was one of the most, a second like aha book, just because I'm like, different perspective.
Well, thanks for sharing those. We'll make sure those are all listed below. So guys, go click down, you can get them. And lastly, what is your number one key to success?
Serve. Treat others well, like serve others. If you are like my grandpa, my dad, my whole life, everything's taught me, if you take care of other people, it will all work out for you. Like, don't worry about, I could say no for a year to deals, because you know what, if I'm taking care of people, it's all gonna, over time in life, all things work out. So, serve others, take care of others, and you can sleep at night.
Which at the end of the day is probably the most important thing, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. No, Julie, I've had just a joy having you on. I appreciate your personality and all that you bring to the table and your perspective. And so thanks for coming on to the show and sharing that with my audience. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and it's great to see you again.
Absolutely.